Okay, good evening, everyone. Hello, council persons. If I could just as a remind you, today, if you want to ask a question or make a comment, please raise your hand. There's sometimes a little bit of a delay on the audio, but if you raise your hands, I can see you. Jody, would you like to lead us in a pledge?
Okay. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
First item on the agenda is a consent agenda. Consider approval of the city council meetings from the city council meeting of May 4th, along with a closed session, and the regular city council meeting of May 18th, also with a closed session. Are there any questions on the meeting notes? If not, if there's a motion to approve.
Make a motion.
Carolyn made a motion to approve. Is there a second?
Second.
Second.
Motion second. Roll call vote, please.
Jordan,
Yes.
Bolin,
Yes.
Reuter,
Yes.
Schneider,
Yes.
Allen,
Yes.
Murphy,
Yes.
Crow,
Yes.
Muse,
Yes, that's not my weed eater.
Roeder,
Yes.
Roeder. Am I missing him?
Yes, he said yes.
He said yes, okay. Eberly,
Yes.
Schott,
Shot yes.
11 A's, thank you.
Thank you. We have no public hearings tonight. We have one special presentation, which is a request to close 10th Street from Cedar to Holloway certain hours of the day on June 13th in support of Rolla High's outdoor graduation. Steve, do you want to elaborate on that?
It's, the detour is going to go down Holloway to 7th and then Cedar Street back to 10th. I've talked with PD and they're going to assist in setting up the detour that night. It does run from 7:30 to 9. The traffic makes it difficult for people to hear the speakers that are going to be at graduation, so I think we can accommodate this fairly easily. Principal Pritchett was going to come by the meeting tonight. I don't know if he's there. I also sent him a Zoom link, so I'm not sure whether he's going to call in or he thought he was going to stop by, but I don't think he's there. But staff recommends approval.
Any questions for council persons?
John.
Oh, John, I'm sorry. Yes.
Hey, Steve, do you know if you're going to do part of the entrance or maybe have people sit out on the street, or is it just more of a sound abatement?
It's more of a sound abatement than anything else.
Any other questions? Jody?
So what kind of public information are you going to put out so people are aware that that's going to be happening so they don't get bummed out by not being able to drive that when they show up there that night?
We'll do our press release for the event, warning the motorists about the detour that night.
Okay.
Steve, have you talked to anybody regarding the social distancing, et cetera?
It was my understanding that is what they're doing, is they're spreading the students out on the field. And that they're going to limit the number of parents that can come to the ceremony.
Okay. So, there's no other questions. Is there a motion to close 10th Street from Cedar to Holloway on June 13th?
So move.
Second.
And made a motion, Carolyn, second. Roll call vote.
Allen,
Yes.
Murphy,
Yes.
Bolin,
Yes.
Schneider,
Yes.
Reuter,
Yes.
Muse,
Yes.
Roeder,
Yes.
Eberly, Eberly,
Yes.
Crow,
Yes.
Schott,
Yes.
Jordan,
Yes.
11 ayes.
I think somebody voted for Matt Crowell.
I vote yes.
Okay, thank you.
I'm going to just take a pause here. We have a representative from the school system that's in the lobby now. That's going to be available if you have any follow-up questions. While we're waiting, let's knock off a few other things here. Report of mayor, council reports, boards and commissions. There's 11 reports there. Are there any questions? There's no old business?
Jim Pritchett is on.
He's been let in, so if you think you should be able to acknowledge Jim on.
Jim, can you hear us?
Yeah, I'm here. I'm sorry. I was
there you
waiting.
go. Okay.
Said the host would let me in, but I finally got in. I think I was listening on YouTube, so I think I got my question answered, but I don't know if the city council has any questions for me.
Council? Jim, can you
I think-
walk us through the health precautions, social distancing, and how?
Sure, that's what I was going to mention that. Yeah, I was going to mention that. I heard some people ask. So we are planning, we have limited tickets so that we can distance people in the stands. Our students are going to be sitting 6 feet apart. We'll put them on the field. All of the things we're working through still, some of the precautions going across the stage and some of that sort of things. But we're taking that very seriously. We don't want to put people at a discomfort, but at the same time we want to offer an experience for our kids, and so we are we're taking all those things into account. And as people have brought up situations, we're working through those. So certainly something that we are taking very seriously. I'll also add, because I heard when I was listening, the question about the road. Our primary thing is just the distraction, the noise, and that's kind of why we came to the city council with this. We felt like if we could limit that distraction, it'll make it for a nicer event for the students and for their parents. So we do appreciate that.
Any questions by council? Ann?
Sorry. Will the public be able to watch on Channel 16 or YouTube?
We are working on that. It's a great question, and we are finalizing that with Fidelity. When we spoke to them a week or maybe a week and a half ago, they were under strict stay-at-home orders, so they couldn't even get out to do the various things. But since then, they've been able to talk to their corporate office, and we've got the okay. We're just trying to finalize that before we put that out. But yes, that's our hope, so that parents and grandparents, things like that, that can't attend the actual ceremony can watch and at least participate that way.
No, thank you. That's a lot of work.
It's a great question. Yeah, it's been an interesting thing. It's made me appreciate going inside at S&T a whole lot more since we've had to adjust to all these outside things. I'm terrified of the rain and what we're going to do if it rains, but we've got a backup date for the next day, and so we'll tackle that if we have to.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Jim, it's our understanding there might be fireworks. Can you elaborate a little bit on that as far as time and duration?
Well, we're working on that. I have talked to both Ron Smith at the fire department, and then today I left a message for Jerry Vale over at S&T, who's done those things. Ron suggested I talk to him. And so Jerry and I have played phone tag. We haven't got it down. The duration, we're talking 3 or 4 minutes is my idea. Simply when we get done, the kids throw their caps in the air, kind of shoot off 2 or 3 minutes worth of fireworks, and then be done. Nothing elaborate, certainly not a complete show, just a little bit of a bang bang, you're done. Something special since everything else has been kind of turned on in. We'll keep the city hall there, and they can in turn keep the council posted on that once we get that specifically all detailed out.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? None?
All right, thank you.
Okay.
Thank you all. Thank you all.
Take care. Moving on to new business, we have two. First item is a motion amending various service agreements. Stephanie?
Good evening. At the last two council meetings, we've adopted or approved 7 contracts between the Finance Department, City of Rolla, and various organizations. After the last meeting, there was an extra review by the Phelps County Emergency Services Board, and they had requested some language to be added to Section 5 under the hold harmless for the city. And if you look in your packet, there's a bold underlined subject to or without waiving sovereign immunity. That was added to all 7 contracts. So this motion is to just amend the contracts as they were adopted, adding the language. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
If there's no questions for Stephanie, is there a motion to amend the various agreements as noted?
Motion.
So moved.
Second.
Get both of those? Roll call vote, please.
Crow,
I think he said yes.
Schott, Schott,
Shot, yes.
is that a yes? Okay. Reuter,
Yes.
Schneider,
Yes.
Jordan,
Yes.
Murphy,
Yes.
Bolin,
Yes.
Mush,
Yes.
Roeder,
Yes.
Eberly,
Yes.
Allen,
Yes.
11 A's.
Motion is approved. Next item is a review of the ordinance 4554, return to work ordinance. What I'd like to do first is to give a little bit of a COVID update as it relates to the city, and then John will take us through the ordinance and some of the modifications, along with a recommendation that we have for you to consider tonight. Regarding the update, the governor has extended by a couple of weeks his existing order with basically no change, reiterating the guidelines for social distancing and mask and the whole 9 yards. The supposition is that that extension probably was driven in part by what happened last week in Lake of the Ozarks. So there's nothing really new to report with regards to the state. Local health assessment, we're still in pretty good shape. The number of cases in Phelps County we believe to be about 4 with no communicable transmissions. That means that those cases did not occur from somebody within the county, but were transmitted to that person from outside the county. One development today, if nobody has seen this, is the number of cases at Fort Leonard Wood. There were 70 cases from military personnel. I'll leave it to you to read up on that, but that's certainly worth watching as to what's on our doorstep. To our best of our knowledge, there are no known COVID admissions to date to Phelps Health, which is terrific. Phelps Health is still utilizing the tent in front of the hospital with daily screenings. The purpose of that is not limited to screening for COVID, but to just take some pressure off of the ER to make sure if somebody does have it, they're not bringing it directly in through that avenue of the hospital. They seem to be doing about 10 screenings to date, per day. That has been steady in the last couple of weeks and down significantly from the late winter and early spring. Phelps Health and I understand Mercy both have now the testing capability to do the antibody testing for anyone that's interested in that. In terms of citizen acceptance, we're 4 weeks into the last action that you have taken, and the citizen acceptance, I would say, is mixed, but pretty darn good overall. Some have made those temporary lifestyle changes. People seem to be more cognizant when they're in stores today as far as social distancing pertains. I think the businesses are accommodating those requests rather well. And you see different people, a different level of compliance with mask and other precautions, but overall, I think the citizens have adopted pretty well. There's always an element out there that feels that it impacts their personal rights, but we live in a great country and people are entitled to believe. From a business acceptance, I think I think the business community as a whole has done extremely well. We have widespread compliance. People generally do want to comply. Our staff is working with the various businesses, going through that notification, education, and support type of process, if you will. There are some inconsistencies out there, and I think there's a handful there that I think fall under that category of individual rights. But we also want to be very cognizant that the impact of these restrictions on certain types of businesses is a little more profound than in others. For the impact on a Walmart is almost negligible. The impact on a small restaurant in our downtown is something that's different. But overall, I think I would give our businesses an A for accepting and slugging through a very tough situation. Just kind of an FYI, in case you're contacted, we have some persistent compliance issues with a handful of people, and it could very well be, assuming that you approve the ordinance tonight, it could very well be in the next ensuing days and weeks that there'll be citations that are given out. That is not where we wanted to start, and we hope we don't get there, but it's a fairness issue as well. And if you expect 9 businesses to do a certain thing, then we ought to expect the 10th one to do the same. City Hall and the other parts of the city have opened on a gradual, methodical, planned, and partial way. City Hall is open. We are still encouraging people to make appointments. The barriers, very, very nice job, are all up being utilized at different levels of the building. The center has gone through a partial reopening. If anybody wants to see the health plan, if I will call it that, the health plan, and the management plan that is supporting that health plan, it's quite impressive. And frankly speaking, I hope our staff at the center really uses that to market, because it's a good story to tell with what we have going on there. The last number I've heard is we have about 100 patrons per day on average using the center. Playgrounds are open to all activities, including all of the play sets or playground equipment. Those are being cleaned on a regular basis. Obviously, walking trails and whatnot are open. Summer leagues, softball, and all of that is going to be opened this week. They're starting, and Floyd has spent an awful lot of time with the folks in those organizing capacities to go over all of the details on how we can properly do that to everybody's protection. Upcoming events. We have some upcoming events with a potential impact on the community. Lions Club Carnival, Summerfest, County Fair, and the return of students in August to both MS&T and Rolla Public School Systems. I'm going to categorize that as a concern. It should be on our radar screen, but not something to say that's not being critical. It's just something that says we have a bit of a concern. The concerns are the ability to manage compliance with either an ordinance, should you extend it, or modify it, or even guidelines. It's going to be very tough to manage all those crowds, if you will. We're concerned about the delayed reaction. A lot of eyes are on Lake of the Ozarks right now to see what happens in the ensuing months, weeks. Depending on who you talk to, some people will say you'll see an effect in 14 days. Other people will say it could be as much as 2 months. But I think there's a lot of eyes in the state that's watching that, and I think that on a much smaller scale, but I think we have to be a bit watchful on some of these community events as we get into August, September, because they're coming right on the heels of each other. So the Lions Club and the Summerfest has a large number of people that are gathering, and then right behind that, you bring 7,000 students into the city. So all of that bears some watching. There's one thing that I ask council persons and community to think about. We do not have an answer to this, but we've never really figured out what our metric is. We've done a very good job figuring out that we need a process and we need a methodology to either restrict or to rescind, but we've never as a community have defined what those mile markers are to do the next action. So at what point, what metric is acceptable to the community to start lightening up? By the same token, when do we clamp down harder? Is it when we have 10 cases, 50 cases, 2 in a hospital, a death? I don't have the answer to that. So I'm really just mentioning that to provoke some thought and some subsequent discussion throughout the whole community, not just council persons. So I will defer now to John to go over the ordinance and then circle back if you have any questions.
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening, everybody. Did a little bit of the introduction of the history of where we've been over the last month or month and a half. And as you know, on March 30th, we initiated our stay-at-home order. That got us in that very difficult situation of trying to decide between the essential and non-essential businesses. We were happy to move into the return to work ordinance that took effect on May 4th, effective on May 5th council meeting. That's what expires today. So council really has 3 options as we look forward to that. One is you can let the existing ordinance expire and take no further action, and we fall then under the state's general guidelines, and that authority for enforcement falls under the health department. The second option would be to just renew the last ordinance and extend that for another 2 weeks, 4 weeks, 6 weeks, just as it is. The third option, what we're proposing for you tonight, is to extend the return to work ordinance and to do that with some gradual relaxing of some of the qualifiers in there. And I want to touch on some of those highlights as we go through this tonight. So I'm referring to the draft that's in your council packet, and starting on page 2 of the ordinance, I want to address the timing of this one. The last ordinance expired today at the council meeting tonight. Arguably today's kind of this strange day in transition. So what we're proposing is a date of July 7th to get us past the next 2 city council meetings. Council could come back in 2 weeks and entertain an ordinance, but it's difficult to keep submitting ordinances before you to do a first and final reading. It's an emergency on 2-week increments, but that's entirely up to council. This ordinance is proposed, goes to July 7th, purely to get past the next 2 council meetings and then see where the council and the community is. On that same page, just to reiterate what the mayor was saying, we talked about implementing a measured approach to mitigate the risk of resurgence. I think we've done a wonderful job as a state, certainly done a wonderful job in Phelps County to take the peak down. That's been the goal. But as the mayor said, we've got these situations occurring over the summer, visitors returning, our own mobility, some of the big events that are occurring, the return of students, all of which makes Rolla a little bit different than a lot of the other urban centers that have been dealing with this a little more aggressively over the last couple of months. On top of page 3, I want to point out a bullet point that we had in our first ordinance, or in our last ordinance, that I think is worth repeating because it gets to this issue of large crowd and special events. And it's the second bullet point. It says specifically, citizens should avoid socializing in groups that do not readily allow for appropriate physical distancing. When in public, citizens should maximize physical distance from others. Now that's a nice statement to make. It's not an easily enforceable one. It's not one that any of us are planning, or police departments or fire inspectors, issuing citations for individuals, but we've put a lot of burden on businesses. And in doing that, we can only expect their cooperation if they're customers and if our citizens are at least conscious of that awareness to avoid unnecessarily large gatherings and crowds. So I just want to remind everybody that that's in there really as a principle, but that's a responsibility we all have as citizens to avoid putting ourselves or the community at large in a big risk. Did add a qualifier to that same section that says citizens are encouraged to wear proper fitting protective masks when visiting businesses or places of assembly. So that's not a mandate that you have to do that. There are some businesses who have mandated that to enter their business that they are requiring that. That's certainly their right to do that. The city, short of the council telling us to enact such an ordinance, we have not really entertained that. But I think there is pretty good evidence that in a crowd where you can't have physical safe spacing, that mask is really effective, not on protecting you, but on protecting others. And so I think it was Monty that pointed out we want to be consistent in our wording, and so we've used that wording through the 5 or 6 different references to wearing a protective, proper fitting protective mask in the ordinance. Some of the tweaking that we've done that we think has provided a little bit of flexibility, and we are certainly hearing from businesses, as the mayor said, we've had very good cooperation, but businesses are also expressing their challenges, their frustrations, the reality of a changing economy, at least for the foreseeable future. So where we can, we want to begin exercising some more flexibility. And these may not seem like big deals, but these were some that we actually heard from some businesses. So under section 3.02, which is all businesses may open with some limitations, we're proposing lifting our seating limitation from 8 patrons to 10 patrons. That can be unrelated people, so you're not required, but if you're going out with friends and you arrive as a group, you certainly have a right to have that dinner or to enjoy that bar in a group of 10. That number is consistent with the state's current limit of gathering as well in social spaces like that. So that makes us consistent. We're at 8, we're proposing going to 10. The very next item, we changed the wording of this. May not seem like a big change, but it can have a real difference on some of the smaller bars and restaurants in particular. We used the language more indicative of the governor's order that says tables must be arranged to maintain a minimum spacing of 6 feet from any other table if no physical barrier exists, and then added a qualifying physical barrier. Our previous ordinance, the one we've been enforcing for the last month, said you actually have to have 6 feet from the assumption of a body in every chair. So in essence, it really was creating about an 8 to 9 foot spacing between tables, because you had to assume the point of spot is from a person sitting in a chair. That was a tighter restriction than what the governor issued, and we're proposing to go with the governor's, which is just 6 feet from tables, knowing that folks will have their backs turned to one another, which is the real objective in the dining experience. Under the next section, under personal services, there's been a lot of talk. We've heard a lot of feedback from the barbers, from the hair salons, some doing a better job than others. One of the things we heard from barbers in particular, salons tend to do everything by appointment. Not bartenders, I'm sorry, hair salons, barbers, almost never do that by appointment. You do it by walking in. I did it for years when I had hair at the downtown barbershop, and that was just part of that experience. So we added the language primarily. The other ordinance is basically saying you have to conduct all your business with an appointment. This is saying, okay, do that to the degree you can, but if you have an empty seat available, or there's only one person waiting in the gathering area, the lobby area, that a patron can walk in and then in proper time be served. And so that was a specific word that came out of some of our small businesses to give a little more flexibility to that. The next section is really kind of an important one. This falls under subsection C, and it has to do with the occupancy provision. You might remember when the governor came out with his order 8 weeks ago, there was 2 qualifiers. There was a floor plan, square footage of the building times either 10 or 30%, or it was the occupancy fire load established by the local governing authority, and it was the greater of the 2 of those that for occupancy. Our last ordinance, we enacted that to say the lesser of the 2. So we've been applying a more strict standard to occupancy than what the governors had allowed. We've had good experience, and so we feel like we can go back to the greater occupancy limits. Now that affects big stores as much as the little stores, but that seems prudent to begin to allow more occupancy into these spaces. We talked about whether that 25 and 10% rule could go to 50 and 25, but we're not seeing that yet at the state, and everyone's kind of anxious to see what the governor's going to do when he reauthorizes in June 15th. But by most accounts, it doesn't look like he's going to go much beyond the 25 and 10, at least for the next foreseeable phase. So that greater of gives a little bit more flexibility. The next section under all businesses compliance, we had in our original ordinance that everybody, all employers, had to run daily temperature checks. We're doing that at City Hall. Not every employee was thrilled with the prospect of doing that, but we are doing that daily on all of our employees. But there's been some feedback now that there's less noticeable transmission, or at least identification of having the coronavirus, or any virus for that matter, by just temperature. So we're adding the language temperature and or to perform a daily COVID questionnaire on all employees to help identify health conditions on all employees. So it's a little less obtrusive in that you're not physically taking someone's temperature. You could choose to do that, but you also can go through and you create the questionnaire. Are you feeling well today? 2 or 3 questions along the line. Track that, keep a note, and I think you've got a good document that says that we're doing the reasonable things to ensure employees are feeling good when they come to work. The next one is perhaps the most significant change, and unfortunately it's a change that we failed to put in the packet that we sent you. We emailed it all on Friday, but when we copied it, we had so many copies going, we didn't grab the last one. And so I want to read this language so that it's out there. The easy wording, and this goes to the social activities under section 3.03, big events. The easy language that we had already shared was that anybody that's having one of these large gatherings, you had to do the sanitizing of equipment daily. The draft that we had early last week said that you have to do it at least every 3 hours. But the real language that we wanted to get in this ordinance for consideration really goes to the heart of Lions Club, to Summerfest. Not so much the fairgrounds, because I think fairgrounds are right outside of the city limits, but there could be a large church that's hosting some big gathering. That's right. So we want to put some language specifically in here to give some more direction. And it says specifically, special events that take place on city property or on public right-of-way. So any of our festival lots, closing of streets, the city ultimately controls those, and we can extract rules that we're comfortable with in working with those people doing that event. But we added the language to say, or special events that require the utilization or support of emergency services, including public works, police, fire, or EMS, shall provide a written health and safety plan. That written health and safety plan must be approved by the city and the Felton County Health Department no less than 14 days prior to the event. So the reality is we're engaging with the Lions Club and Summerfest and other activities like this, even churches who are trying to figure out how to get back into full worship. There's just no way to put all that in an ordinance. Every circumstance, the event has a unique nature, and we're saying if you're going to do this on public property, you have to provide that. If you're doing this on private property, and Lions Club is private property, you expect to have the support of the services that the city can provide in security and public works, then this plan has to be well established, well thought through, submitted in advance, and approved by the city. So just doing a plan, saying that looks nice, but we don't have any intention of implementing it, that's not going to pass muster to extend our services and our public safety employees to a situation that we think is unhealthy or unsafe. So I think that's a significant change to this ordinance over the last one, because the last ordinance, quite frankly, simply said you can do all these things now. We had to give a bit more definition so that we had a good feel for how that compliance is going to be met. And I think that was the only other change. Unfortunately, we're asking again for consideration for a first and final reading tonight, which is a lot to do. I should qualify, there is one more statement in here, that our original ordinance had the city's emergency declaration expire June 30th. It was 90 days from our very first ordinance. This now also extends our emergency declaration through July 7th to coincide with the return to work ordinance. The state's current emergency declaration ends June 15th, but by all accounts, we know the governor is going to be issuing a renewal of that. We just don't know if he's going to be launching phase 2 of his reopening of Missouri. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions. Certainly there could be some conversation amongst issues or concerns amongst the council members, and we'll be happy to try and answer those. Okay, that's Jody.
So John, do you have any idea what the governor's phase 2 will look like once we go there?
Well, we're not hearing much from the governor's office yet on that. We'll have our conference call tomorrow at 4:30, I think it is. But the governor's been really mirroring the president's 4-stage plan. And I think, my guess is Missouri was probably ready to launch into phase 2 until the Lake Ozark situation occurred. And I think they sort of decided, we're going to wait another couple weeks before we make that determination. So if you look at the president's plan about this gradual reopening, I really think you're going to see that reflective of phase 2 in Missouri. And that still goes to, basically prohibiting access to nursing homes, other high-risk facilities. It's still providing occupancy limitations. It's still safe distancing. I think all of that's going to continue in both the presidential plan and the governor's plan.
Okay, thank you.
Carolyn had a question here.
I just think that our constituents are not stupid, but I've had so many questions about people. Well, who do we follow? Which plan do we follow? The governor, the county, the city, whatever. And I honestly believe that I wish that whatever the governor would say, we could all just do that and it would work. But it won't, because Rolla is not St. Louis. Rolla is not Rolla is not Fort Wood, even though it's close. But the people have been so good, I think, about most of them following, and even some going above board to really make it safe, not for just themselves, but for everybody.
Carolyn, I'm going to disagree with you slightly, okay? And I have a certain large part of me that's libertarian in nature. However, I think part of what we experience in this community is damn luck, okay? And I think luck leads to some complacency. We keep talking about the governor, and I think every time somebody says, well, the governor opened everything up, those same people don't seem to want to read the full 3 pages. And what the governor says is, we can open up, but here are the guidelines. All the city of Rolla did was to take his guidelines and put them in an ordinance. Technically speaking, we're not really any more restrictive than what the government is saying we should be doing. Now, if you're a type of person that doesn't want to be told what to do, I get it. I don't like to be told what to do either. All I'm saying is, at what point, and I don't know that magic point, when we loosen up or restrict. But here's what I do know. We have a couple of carnivals, a fair, and 7,000 students coming back into this town from all over Hell's Half Acre, including hotspots. And I think being a little prudent as we go through the next couple of months is the way to go. I don't think we're restricting anybody's rights that significantly. I really don't.
No, I agree.
But it's going to be hell if we have to reverse course. If we open too quick and then have to come back and start clamping down, then that's going to be a problem. So, just another perspective. Councilor Ann?
Yeah, I have to agree with what you're saying too, is that I believe moving forward, if we can continue to relax in some areas but maintain the appropriate measures that have taken place now to lessen that curve, I believe that we would be, like you said, ready, more prepared for our student population coming back in the throes, and maybe have some better tricks up our sleeve on enforcing, working with the university and getting them to comply too. I just think we can't move too fast because it's not gone and it will come back.
I think we should be data driven, and each time
Yes.
we come back to you, we're looking to relax it a little bit and a little bit. And if the data stays as it does now, we keep relaxing. But I don't think we should go from, well, we don't have any cases, so everything is open with no constraints. I think that's, as I said, a bridge too far.
But we can't do that because we would have to follow the state's guidelines, so.
No, we don't. No, we don't, John. We have the ability to be more restrictive. The governor,
That's
every
right.
Wednesday, every Tuesday, he closes his conversation by saying, but the communities need to do what's best for the communities.
Right, but if the communities, and there are probably a few of them in the state, are following state guidelines. And if we don't have specific city guidelines, we have to follow state guidelines, is what I'm saying. I'm not saying we can't be more restrictive. What I'm saying is we could pull back and follow state guidelines, especially given where our county is and where the counties are around us. But anyway, thank you.
I think we haven't had our call this week, but I think when we speak to the health director, my guess is she's going to bring up Pulaski County. Because very early on in the assessments between the county, the hospital, and the county health director, one of the tripwires was going to be when it breaks out on the periphery of Phelps County. And if and when that day comes, because there's a certain amount of people that go back and forth either because they work or they get other services. So again, that's a concern. So I think what we're asking for is loosening up on a methodical basis that's driven by the outcome. Rachel?
Thank you, Lou. I think you made a really good point sort of at the beginning of our discussion by saying we do need to think about kind of as a body here, what's the metrics to sort of rescind or to clamp down harder. I was wondering how much of the thinking by John and city administration is driven by these conversations with Phelps Mary's County's health department. Like, is there information or thinking that they have that could be helpful for us to consider, or?
Not on that specific question, Rachel.
Okay.
We have for the last 90 days weekly conversations, and they have been, I think, successful and good for all of the entities, because we can use each other as a sounding board and we can work sort of in unison. Last week, the university has been added to that group. So the Director of Health Services, Dr. Goodman, he is now a weekly participant on those as well. So what we want to make sure is that we as a community are aware of where they're headed as well. And to be, without putting words in Dr. Goodman's mouth, but he's like the rest of us. We're learning as we go. Any other questions? John, anything you want to add?
No.
If not, first reading, please.
An ordinance amending ordinance number 4554 in the city of Rolla, Missouri, allowing all businesses to operate within the city of Rolla with proper safeguards.
So reluctantly, I have to ask the question. Would you please waive the rules and have a second reading?
I make a motion to suspend the rules.
Second.
Motion made by Marie, second by Rachel. All in favor, say, the roll call vote.
Eberly,
Yes?
Ellen,
Yes.
Murphy,
Yes.
Boland,
Yes.
Schneider,
Yes.
Bruder,
Yes.
Bush.
No.
Is that no?
One no.
Jordan,
Yes.
Crow,
Yes.
what was that?
Yes.
Thank you. Schott,
Yes.
Roder,
Yes.
10 ayes and 1 nay.
Second reading, please.
An ordinance amending ordinance number 4554 in the city of Rolla, Missouri, allowing all businesses to operate within the city of Rolla with proper safeguards.
Before they vote on that, they add the amendment, because we didn't post that qualifier, the additional language for.
They need that for the formal.
You need a motion to amend that language.
Aren't we adopt? Oh, because it wasn't in the public packet.
Correct.
Okay, so we had the second reading. Is there a motion, because the draft that was publicly posted did not have the section, the sentence, the complete sentence on page 5. So we need a motion to amend to include that.
Mr. Mayor, let me go ahead and state it, and she can say if that's what she's moving. Motion to amend the ordinance to include the words frequently, parentheses, at least every 3 hours, in parentheses, period. Special events that take place on city property or on public right-of-way, or special events that require the utilization or support of emergency services, including public works, police, fire, or EMS, shall provide a written health and safety plan. Said written health and safety plan must be approved by the city and the Phelps County Health Department no less than 14 days prior to the event.
So is there a motion to make that amendment?
I'll make a motion to amend it.
Carolyn made the motion. Is there a second?
Ann Murphy raised her hand.
Murphy, okay.
Roll call
Yes,
vote.
yes, second.
Schneider,
Yes.
Roder,
Yes.
Reuter,
Yes.
is it no?
No, she said yes.
Yes, okay. Boland,
Yes.
Jordan,
Yes.
Murphy,
Yes.
Schott,
Yes.
Crow,
Yes.
Mush,
No.
Allen,
Yes.
Eberly,
Yes.
10 ayes and 1 nay.
So it's now as amended.
Now is there a motion to approve the ordinance?
Mr. Mayor, if I could, I think we need to do
Reread it?
do this second reading as amended.
Okay, go ahead.
So second reading as amended, an ordinance amending ordinance number 4554 in the city of Rolla, Missouri, allowing all businesses to operate within the city of Rolla with proper safeguards.
Is there a motion to approve the amended ordinance?
I'll make a motion.
Carolyn made a motion. Is there a second? Christine? Roll call vote.
Schott,
Yes.
Mush,
No.
Jordan,
Yes.
Boland,
Yes.
Schneider,
Yes.
Reuter,
Yes.
Allen,
Yes.
Murphy,
Yes.
Crow,
Yes.
Eberly,
Yes.
Roder,
Yes.
10 ayes and 1 nay.
Thank you for that. Moving on, we have no claims and/or fiscal transaction. Citizen communication, is there anyone here that would like to speak to city council? Sir? No? Yes. If you would, you have to say your name and address.
All right. Wesley Crutcher, 590 Basswood Drive. I spoke to you a few weeks ago. I'm going to say the same things. We have no idea whether social distancing is working. There's no evidence of it at all. There are places where they did social distancing and people still got it. New York's a good example. People were told to stay at home, and they're finding out a lot of these people who stayed at home still got it. Didn't work there. You're assuming it will work here. Why we want to be cautious, you are enforcing these guidelines, punishing people for trying to get their stuff open and trying to serve their businesses. You're taking it like none of us are adults. You're taking us like we are children right now, and we have to be told exactly how to do or be punished by it. These are extraordinary things. They are not ordinary things that you would be normally on there for businesses. You are adding additional strain on businesses. The other big problem is you're all doing this from home, except for one councilwoman who is here. You all won't even give the citizens the pleasure of actually being in the room where you could possibly face them face to face. Instead, you are at home voting on this in one night. I get it's an emergency and we want to get things done, but you guys aren't even here, again, except for the one who did show up. Whether I disagree with you or not on this shouldn't matter, but you should be here. Obviously, everyone's going to have different opinions, but if you're going to cast rules that are going to affect the people of this town, you should be in this room, not at your house. It sets an example that you're all afraid, which would only cause panic in the town. If people in power are afraid, how afraid should the people in the town be? You've all decided that you're afraid enough you want to be at home. Well, now you want to try to force everyone else to apply to the rules that you want. And the fact that you are being afraid at home means shows that you are ruling by fear, not by logic. You won't even show up here to talk with us about it. If you believe all your social distancing works and everything, apply it while you're here. Don't stay at home doing it. Actually apply it and do it in practice here. Again, I'm going to ask you tonight for the next one to actually go and void all these rules you just did. Whether you do it or not, that's all up to you, but I'm going to ask it. You pushed this all through without actually getting public opinion. You decided on your own. Whether you got some comments from some of your constituents or not, I don't know. But I know you did not go out and ask for public opinion from everybody. You just left it out there and decided you're going to do it. I believe that's wrong. It doesn't matter what you're passing. If you just decide to unilaterally pass something in one night without actually going out and trying to get everyone's opinion you possibly can, you push it through. That's not the way to governor, and you all, I'm pretty sure, know that. You all ran for your positions, asking your constituents to support and vote for you. Prove it that you want to go for your constituents by actually asking them whether they want it or not. Don't just push it through on your own thoughts or fears. We do want to control the situation, but again, the data's not out there to support that this is actually working. I thank you for your time. That's all I got to say tonight.
Well, there's a lot to disagree with there. But in any event, I think you're being unduly hard on council. I don't think they're showing fear. I think they're showing leadership. And I think they ought to be pretty proud of what they're doing. As far as what the public thinks, I assure you, us at City Hall take phone calls and emails and texts all the time. I think council people are doing likewise. And I will tell you that for every person that says open up, there's another person that says be prudent. I don't think this is a 90-10 on either way. So, and I think when you go too fast, you have Lake of the Ozarks. And I think Missouri is an embarrassment. I think we're the laughingstock of the country. When 17 million people look at what happened on that afternoon, if I was the governor, I'd hold my head in shame, to be quite honest with you, but in any event. Moving on, Mayor, City Council comments. Are there any council comments? Jody?
So I just want to take this opportunity to thank Darren and Floyd and the parks people and the public works people and whoever it was that was involved in fixing the sidewalk and drainage problem that's on the Acorn Trail just behind Veterans Park where the little bridge is. That's been a real difficult section of trail for a long time, and I was by there today, and it's been new concrete put in, and it looks like the drainage is going to be much better. So thank you very much for that hard work.
Rachel?
Not to embarrass Floyd, but I've gotten feedback from local citizens who are really excited about the tiny libraries that I know Floyd, the Realtors Association, and a bunch of groups worked on to put in at Bearwan Park. I've seen it over there as I've been walking around, and it's just a great thing.
Christine?
And I was actually at the park also and noticed the hand sanitizers that were already put up and at the pavilion, at least in Bearwan, where I was, and that was much appreciated. So thank you for that too.
David?
Yeah, I have some thanks as well that I'd like to pass on. I first like to thank the mayor, administrator, police, and fire departments for all that they've been doing to help keep the citizens of Rolla safe during the pandemic and all the extra work they've been doing. I also wanted to give a thank you to our city employees for their willingness to adapt to the many changes that have been happening. And another comment along with Christine's and Jody's, I actually had a friend who was at Veterans Park today when it was reopening, and he said that the city employees were doing a very thorough and deep job of disinfecting and cleaning. So many thanks to their hard work and their extra efforts that all city employees are being asked of, and just pass that along to all of them that we are very appreciative. The other comment I wanted to make was also just a big thank you to Nick Barrick and CSE Enterprises and USA Tours for the work that their crews have been doing on the train at Schumann Park. It's really looking great, and it's been a great service to our community. So thank you to them as well.
I don't know if Floyd is on. Yeah, Floyd, you're on. Do we have a target of a recognition ceremony for that in the works? Might not be on.
I don't think he's on.
We don't.
It's not muted though, is it?
Okay. Any other council comments? Comments to the good of the order? I have one. It's a civic fundraiser that I'll plug here for a second. One of our citizens, Judy Jepson. Anyone that knows Judy knows she is passionate about animal welfare. And over the years, she's given her heart, her money, and her time to animal welfare. And I think she single-handedly keeps John and I, almost weekly, on track to be sure we follow through with this animal shelter. Judy, with some help, Judy has two hobbies, cooking and animals, and she's combined those, and with some assistance from Lana Sowers and Scott Printing, has written and published a cookbook. Very well done, very professional, with colors and some stories, and it's titled For the Love of Cooking and for the Love of Animals. 100% of the proceeds from this book are being dedicated to the new animal shelter. They're $20. Judy can be reached at, she's on the police personnel board, so if you go to the city's website, you can find her phone address and email and likewise. But thanks very much to Judy. I understand as of today, she's raised about $1,500, and the selling of the books has gone so well, there's a second printing that's being put out there pretty soon. So thank you, Judy, if you're listening. Any other comments for the good of the order?
Just like.
Oh, that's Floyd.
So yes, talking about the train, we don't have a date yet for that. The tentative plan is to actually finish the train this week. We still have priming, some more priming to do, painting, stenciling the letters, putting the essentially the furniture back in. So all that hopefully will get done by the end of the week. But we plan on having a notice that we will circulate to the media, and so we'll definitely have like a ribbon cutting. We'll have the, I anticipate asking the chamber for help on that, and within the social guidelines so that we can do the recognition for this fantastic work that is being done by this very good group of volunteers who have taken a lot of pain and patience and passion to really bring the train back to what its glory days were when it was first came off the assembly line. So we're really looking forward to that. A lot of folks have really contributed, so we definitely want to recognize their efforts in that endeavor.
Do you want to talk about the cemetery cleaning? Because there's a volunteer group that's doing a bang-up job with that too.
So Carol Goggin, who has been probably the lead person in this, has personally probably cleaned upwards of 50-some stones. She's focused primarily on the Civil War, the monuments that we have there, both the Union and the Confederate. We have about between 50 and 60 of those, and so she's focused initially on those, but we've had volunteer groups from the community. We've had soldiers from Fort Leonard Wood that came before this latest unfortunate situation occurred there on the base, but we've had a lot of different volunteer groups that have come and made a really significant contribution. And if you've been in the cemetery of late, particularly for Memorial Day, I think you've seen results of that. We have over 14,000 graves there, so it's a lot of work, but we're focusing on the ones before the 1900s. But even when you narrow that down, that's still a lot of stones. So we still have more to do, but we've made a significant impact on cleaning those and making those. And so far, I'd have to say in that effort, we've only had 4 stones that we have not been able to read. And when I say read, we both restoring and we do rubbing with carbon paper, and there's some other techniques that we've used, and Carol's been very instrumental in helping with that. But only 4 of those are so far deteriorated that we haven't been able to read anything off them. So out of all the stones that we've looked at, I think that's pretty significant. So we're real pleased with that.
Floyd, before you leave,
Yeah.
for anybody that's interesting, you told me the difference when you look at a stone, if that was a Confederate or a Union. Would you tell the public?
Yeah,
difference?
the Union ones are you can tell by the shield. So if there's a shield outline on that stone, then it is a Union memorial. The Confederates tend to have the CSA or as theirs, but that's a quick way to visually just look and tell. If you see the shield, then it's going to be a Union soldier, and that's primarily what we have there. We don't have that many Confederates there. That's because we had a Union fort here back during that period.
Thank you. Great. Any other comments for the good of the order? There's no closed session, so meeting adjourned.
We only need one signature for meeting room.
Yeah, well, hold on.
Carolyn, what's the occasion? My God, how many calories are...